Hello, I'm Linda Gillespie and I'm your instructor. This is the first video I've actually done this semester because I've been going through, as you can tell, some medical treatments, and I finally have some hair growing back, and I didn't want to shock you all with looking like a chihuahua. So now I look more like a shaved cocker perhaps. But anyway, I appreciate your tolerance, and I wanted to talk to you today about Nobody's Child. I consider this a very important assignment in this class. This, along with the field trip that we had to Houston and the questions about that, and the movie that you're going to have coming up, the video, The Wild Child, have to do with three very important topics, and two of them with ethics, and one specifically with psychosocial rehabilitation that I wanted you to look at, and the other one being an organization that serves all of South County and Stanislaus County, all the small communities with psychological and functional services that people need. And so you had the opportunity to go and visit it, and those of you who couldn't go needed to look up the information. But they're 15% of your grade, and they're in place of a term paper. They're an evaluation and assessment to see what you know about psychosocial rehab. So you need to take them seriously. That means that probably one sentence isn't going to answer the question. And so that's why I'm doing a video for you, because I want to explain that. And you have an opportunity to go back and to redo it. I have re-put in Nobody's Child. I got it from YouTube this time. And it's in 3 segments, and it is there on Blackboard. It's open, and you can go in and redo your questions if you wish. If you don't wish to, that's all right too. But I just wanted to go over it with you a little bit. Marie Balter is a real person. As a small child, she was put into an orphanage by a dysfunctional mother that we know very, very little about, except that she was mentally ill. Or was she? Nobody really had the time to diagnose her. They just assumed that she had some sort of mental disability and was definitely an alcoholic. She abandoned her child twice. She had the opportunity to take her back out of the state hospital. She also had the chance to keep her when she was a baby, and she chose to give her up to the convent. Now, you know something just from that alone. That does not mean that Marie automatically had a genetic mental illness. It doesn't mean that at all. People just kind of thought maybe that's what had caused Marie to be kind of crazy. First of all, putting her in a convent where the nuns were very, very strict, and just hearing a nun say to her, "You can't cry, Marie," should give us all a clue about what the nuns expected of her in terms of behavior. My mother, as a small child, found herself in a similar type of institution, and they got her up at 5 o'clock every morning, and she had all these things she couldn't do. She couldn't talk, she couldn't cry, and she learned how to darn socks and to make lace and to knit and to crochet, which were good skills, it turns out. And then my grandmother found her and took her home, and all was well again. But nevertheless, it was a very strict environment and not a very loving environment. That's not what the nuns did. And so here's this little girl who's placed into an adoptive home, and you know that the dad is out on a ship most of the time fishing, and left with this mother who doesn't really want her to begin with, and who becomes very, very abusive. Picture yourself being locked in a dark, stuffy closet, and you can't talk or make any noise, and there you are until somebody decides to let you out. How scared you must be. And then to be put outside, even as a very small child, in the cold and the dark, and left out there with all the fears and all the scary things that we think of as children. And you grow up that way. And the last episode you saw of Marie going home was she was locked out one more time because her father died, and the mother made it very clear, "You're not wanted, Marie." And what does she do? She strikes out and breaks a window. What made her suicidal as a teenager? What made her so depressed and so upset that she tried to kill herself? Well, those are things you have to think about. But you have to think about, how would you, each of you, want to have handled that? How do you think Marie should have been handled? Well, somebody should have looked at removing her from her home. Now, of course, she was in a Catholic school, And they don't have the same rules as the public schools did, but schools did remove children at that age. And there were laws for kids who had things happen to them. But nobody did that with Marie. They just left her alone, and nobody paid any attention to that very hurting child. No teachers, no one. What a shame. So what happens? She ends up in an institution at age 16, severely depressed. Obviously, they had found her near death from trying to commit suicide. At that point, what do you call a teenager? Do you call her schizophrenic? Well, when she was a child, we didn't know that most schizophrenia doesn't show itself until probably late teenagerhood. Ages 17 to 25 is where schizophrenia comes in. So it wasn't what the diagnosis should have been. Somebody should have said, this is a really depressed kid. They should have talked to her. They should have gotten her into a discussion. But they didn't. They just medicated her, which we did all too often, and still do for the most part. We've gotten better. We've gotten much better at it. So what you were asked to do was to look at the situation genetically and then non-genetically. What were Marie's issues and problems? What do we see being manifested? What would have helped her? Well, psychosocial rehabilitation can help children because it's all about how to function, about how to learn to survive in life, about having those kinds of things that can make you at peace with yourself. It doesn't have to be sitting in an office with a counselor, a therapist, or whomever. It has to do with getting to see yourself in a positive way. And she certainly could have been helped with that. She could have been led to read the books that she loved so passionately, maybe to have dance lessons, maybe to be put in a new home with loving people. All kinds of things that nobody ever considered for Marie, even when releasing her from the institution. And that mother would gladly have gotten rid of that child. It's obvious that she just didn't want her in the first place and shouldn't have had her. So as you take a look at what the doctors did, they did not evaluate her. They just made a decision that was not based on anything functional at all. What was going to happen to Marie when she was 16 and let out as still a young woman? Nothing. Nothing changed. They just sent her back home. What happened to her when she came back as an adult after being locked out again and petrified by being at a loss without the one person who showed her any love at all? That was the dad, who was always gone on his fishing trips. So back into the institution, and finally you have a doctor who takes some time to find out what Marie is really all about. But even then, she spends years, not just 2 or 3 years, many more years inside that hospital situation until finally she has the opportunity to get out and to work and to find some success and to learn the skills that let her survive out in the community. That's what you need to be looking at, and that's the value of this video. How does someone like Marie, the abused child, come up with a master's degree from Harvard and open her own clinic for people who have similar kinds of problems? She's an amazing woman, and she survived because she was smart, and she was able to see her own worth, finally, with the help of people like you. And that's what you're training yourselves to do. At one point, somebody in our lives, one person, can make a big difference. And each of us who goes into the helping services wonders if we can ever be that person. And I think that's the beauty of going into counseling or whatever it is that you choose to go into. My degrees are in counseling psychology or counseling, and I like that because it's a more personal approach to practical psychology. It's doing what the theory suggests as opposed to just sitting in an office. You're out, working with people in the community or other places, and that's what I like best. But I see this as a kind of a fun way. The same thing with your domain question. What I asked you for was to take a look at the bullying situation and look at it. How do you get involved? You go to the school. That's where kids go. Kids are in the school, but this was not a school problem. Facebook is not a school issue. That's a parental issue. It's the family that allows somebody to have unsupervised time on Facebook, and they don't supervise it, which those parents certainly should have done. If it had been my child at age 12, they'd never have had Facebook offered to them, much less their own PowerBook or computer not supervised anyway. So take a look at that again. Take a look at those issues. These are very practical issues that you're being asked to look at. How do you want to handle those? Who do you go to? Who are your resources? And especially with young people, you cannot do it without the schools. The only way that you can get help is through organizations that are charged with helping you serve people who are mentally ill or people who are learning disabled in some way. Even a disabled student who's physically disabled. The schools are a primary agency for having contact to get something started in the way of a program or a plan. So you might want to take a look at what some of those are. Anyway, you can go back and look at this assignment again, and if you want to redo it and take time with it, this is not just meant as a write-off. This is meant for you to go back and analyze it. Take a look at it. If I asked you to do a term paper, you'd be asked to do reference pages, you'd be asked to cite your sources within your paper and do all that. In this class, I don't do a term paper because you are doing a term assessment of people with these 3 assignments. So take a look at that again and maybe take a little more time with it and do it better. You know you can call me if you have a question about it, but think it through. This is not just 5 minutes before 12 on the day it's due that you dash it out. I don't care if you discuss it with each other. Great idea. Come up with a plan. What would work? How would you do it if you were working in your volunteer situation or volunteering in a school or whatever you're doing? How would you help somebody get the services they need and find out what they actually have? So it's open on Blackboard. Do it on Blackboard. Redo it. I don't care. If you don't want to, just understand that's 15% of your grade. So good luck with it. I love reading what you write, and these particular assignments, 2 of them at least this week, your domain question and this one, I was really interested in what you have to say because I get a lot of ideas from you. So have a great day, and thank you.